Recently, within the comments on one of the videos, I was asked to share an example of how I live, of my daily lifestyle. And as I was feeling into that request, this conversation felt inspired to share. So I will share a little of my daily lifestyle, but I feel there are things to share before that. So we hear a lot in the current world about sustainable lifestyles, and we always seem to have these like keywords of the moment, and sustainable is one of them. And from my perspective, what that means is that we create something that we know we can show up for. In my experience and with sharing with clients who have experienced trauma or sexual abuse, we always discuss about creating a safe environment for the work to be done, for them to start to integrate into their lives what is nourishing and what is kind, and what will support them to let go of what is no longer happening, of what happened. So by a safe environment, I don't simply mean that you're at home and the phone is off and you're not disturbed at all, and that you feel safe within your four walls. We want to create our body as a safe environment. And so that goes to how we start to relate with ourselves and relate with our body. This means dropping away from thinking and intellect and moving deeper into intelligence and feeling and heart space, which can seem a little bit frightening because we create so much to keep us away from feeling and away from being in our body, especially if we have experienced a form of trauma or sexual abuse. So we start to become aware of these habitual patterns and habitual things we have developed into our day that once upon a time would have served us. But they start to become old and they are no longer relative to the present moment, to who we are today. And because we may no longer be in threat today, and the thing that happened is no longer happening. But because we keep these habitual behaviors and patterns around that we have developed to keep ourselves feeling safe at that time, they start to actually keep us from growing from that time, from moving. I wouldn't say moving forward, because that can be such a cliche thing that people actually can feel uncomfortable with, but moving. So creating this safeness, this safe environment is a sustainable daily lifestyle. And within that, like I said, we can start to notice our habitual patterns that no longer serve us. That doesn't mean they are wrong. They were right for that time. They just don't fit now. But also we begin to notice things that we have absorbed from society or our upbringing, our culture, our parents, our siblings, friendships, past relationships, that also need adjusting, that aren't relative to the present moment. And this is all part of creating a safe environment. It's where we feel we can be at ease to be with the work, which again, the work is another phrase that is shared a lot lately. And the work kind of, even those words can make us feel that there is a lot to be done, and it may take a long time, and we're going to have to try, and there's going to have to be force. And it doesn't mean that we can soften the phrase, the work, and actually what it's asking for us is to show up consistently. And that is what a sustainable lifestyle is. It means that we create things that we know will nourish and nurture us and support us and be kind and loving to ourselves and respectful of others. But there are things that we know that we can attend to and be with on a daily basis. Often, if we approach it from the work, and it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be challenging, and there are things that may arise that are going to be uncomfortable, which of course there are, that straight away can be a reason, a self-made reason not to show up for ourselves. But until we do, these things cannot be noticed, witnessed, understood from a new perspective, and let go of, because they're not present for this time. Often another pattern that we may create is that we'll create these ideas, okay, I'm going to start meditating, or I'm going to start journaling, but we set ourselves up these big tasks, and the pattern there can be failure. So it's almost like we could set our expectations so high to almost support the habitual belief or the habitual patterning that we will fail, or that we never complete projects, whatever the belief is. So it's really taking notice of how we can create things or embrace things into our daily life that don't feel like another to do. It's not a sustainable lifestyle, and creating a safe environment for ourselves shouldn't feel, and that's not a word I use very often, the good old should and shouldn't. It's not meant to feel like a to-do list. There are so many cultures that meditation, for example, is part of their life. It's not something they feel they have to do or should do, or make a big thing of, that maybe, some people say they meditate, there's a felt sense of superiority or separating themselves from others, whereas meditation simply means to be present and to be listening, to be in silence so that we can listen. So that, all that said, my daily lifestyle I created for myself when I was around 29, and it has been consistent because I felt it really needed to be. So a lot of that was how I began the day, and I speak to people about how we start the day is how we set the tone for the day. And if we have lived a lot in the past in hypervigilance, disassociation, fight or flight, And then we wake up in the morning and straight away there's an alarm going off, jolting us into the day. And then we rush, 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 busy, busy, busy to get ready and get out the door. And then we've got this massive to-do list that we're ticking off, which was how my life used to be. And if that to-do list isn't achieved, then there's some kind of failure going on there. And so this big push all the time. And that keeps the nervous system it feeds the nervous in that state of whatever we've experienced in the past, the traumatic experience, the abuse experience. It keeps that alive, that is still happening, because the situation to the nervous system is can't be seen by the nervous system. It's felt. It's how we are feeling. And so if we want to feel something new, then we have to feed that something new. All the time we are feeding an old feeling, it's going to be in our lives still. So I noticed I needed to begin the day differently. So to set the tone of the day, and that meant slowing down. And slowing down doesn't mean doing everything really slowly, walking more slowly, brushing our teeth more slowly, showering more slowly, although those things are very, very mindful and delicious of themselves. It means slowing down, a felt sense of slowing down, a feeling. So I begin my day and I don't open the curtains. I wake up to a natural body clock. But I set the intention of what time I'm going to be waking up, and I always wake up at that time because my body clock has moved in that way. So I'm not being jolted awake. I wake up, keep the curtains closed, so it all feels very woomy. And I gently begin to emerge into the day. So I'll go downstairs, make my pot of tea. I always have some raw chocolate in the morning. Just because that brings something to my life that meets who I am as a person, and I will be back in bed with my pot of tea and chocolate, and I will journal. So years ago, and this is years ago, when I was 29, back then the journaling was a real expression and a pouring out of how I was feeling, and how I was feeling was actually stored emotion. I am feeling is present, and feelings from the past are emotions. They are how we felt, and we didn't have the tools to meet them, and especially as children, understand them or voice them. So journaling gave a place for me to pour out. And from the age of 29, and I'm in my 50s now, I have journaled every morning. And to me, it's not a to-do. It's an essential part of my life. It's how I live. And all of these things are not something we do. They become part of our being. It's who we are, and how we feed and nourish who we are as a being. So initially, for years, it was a lot of the past coming up to be reviewed and accepted and acknowledged. And they unravelled them from there. And what it came to the realisation was that I was actually, through the journaling, emptying out until there was emptiness and there was no story left. And there was just today, this moment, this breath. As then after the journaling every morning, I spend some time in meditation. And I said earlier on in the video, meditation doesn't necessarily mean that we have to carve time out to meditate. like what happens is journaling and meditation, when we take the time initially, when we're beginning, they actually begin to seep into and feed our day. And as I said, how we start our day sets the tone for the day. So I still spend time in the morning journaling and in meditation, and it's just my time to be and breathe and be present. The presence is supported by the long, slow and deep breath. The presence is supported by the sounds I can hear. So moving back into a very sensual world. And then that meditation, which that presence then feeds through the rest of my day, and that I've shown up for myself through meditation and journaling feeds through the rest of the day. Behind all the actions, so the being is in the doing. And this, just that simplicity of slowing down in the morning and emerging slowly into the world, sets the tone of the nervous system. And over time, we start to notice that this lifestyle we have created is not something we are having to try to achieve, or that it's something else to do, that actually it's just the simplicity of how we live. Just like when we were children, before culture, society, situations, traumatic events, abuse, whatever our childhood was like, we ingrained and absorbed as truth and then formed. The promises we make as children are so strong, the promises we make to ourselves and the beliefs and the untruths we absorb. Before those things happened, when we look at children and we were exactly the same, they are totally present. They couldn't give a monkey's about what happened 10 minutes ago or 2 hours ago, or the day before, and they're not looking ahead of what they're going to do next. It's adults that say, do you remember what we did yesterday, and later on we're going to go to, or we're going to do. But children are totally absorbed in their body and in the present, because they are feeling the world around them through their senses. They are coming from intelligence. They have not yet moved into the world of head and mind and intellect. And that is really how we can return to this not neutral place, but this place where the past no longer is defining us, or puppeteering the decisions and the choices that we make unconsciously on a daily basis. It's not that, I'm speaking of you, of how I start my day and how my day is lived, but it's, to me, I wouldn't choose any other way, because it's created calm and contentment in being present and spending that time to show up for myself. The journaling, as I said before, was a real expression of what needed to be expressed, what hadn't had the space or the devotion to be expressed, or even the words, the language, especially things that happen as children. But now journaling is more intentional of the moment, the feeling and the choices and the decisions of the day. Creating a sustainable lifestyle is devotion. It comes from a desire that the way we're living isn't working anymore. And it's become so uncomfortable that something has to give. And so, as I said, it's not about making meditation or journaling or creating a new lifestyle for yourself, something that has to be done, because very often if it's something we think we have to do, then we will resist it. It has to come from a place of desire and devotion, until it becomes so natural that it feels, if we, haven't journaled and haven't meditated and haven't come into that place of presence, that it feels weird, like haven't brushed my teeth. Yes, I feel that's all I have to say about that. I also, life will always be messy and chaotic. That is life. There is sunshine and there is rainbows and there is shitstorms. But what changes through this sustaining a new lifestyle, feeding, like you're feeding a child, feeding a loved one, feeding a plant, you're feeding what you do want. The drama we attach to the messiness and the chaos doesn't happen, because the drama that we attach to it is because we're not accepting that there is messiness and chaos. Destruction is the breaking down of structure. So the structures we have created in our lives that no longer fit or are no longer working, or worked then and didn't work now, they start to deconstruct. And that feels like destruction. That feels like chaos. That feels like messiness. And if we can maintain presence and just be with that, it moves, and because you're allowing it to move. But as soon as we attach drama and story to it, and I'm not saying that in a devaluing way, but it's what we do to keep attached to what actually wants to deconstruct. So this sustainable lifestyle, this safe container, this safeness that we create for ourselves to grow and nourish and know ourselves, the truth of ourselves, and to remember who we were before we absorbed untruths and created beliefs from those untruths, and before we experienced trauma and abuse and then took that trauma and abuse to inform who we are. They start to actually feed the whole of our life, when, just as they fed the whole of our life as an untruth, as they start to leave, then we're actually being fed in a new way, and realizing that actually our true nature is a place of being, and there's calm and there's aliveness and creativity and joy and pleasure and all those delicious things, and everything else is just noise.